Hello, everyone, and welcome to Paranormal Talk. My name is Jaden Silverwolf, and I will be your host. Now, Paranormal Talk has been long in the making. It has been one of my biggest life goals is to make a face-to-face video talk show about paranormal, where we can discuss paranormal topics with something that you can actually see instead of just listening onto the radio. You really don't know who you're talking to. Paranormal Talk is going to involve a lot of me talking with you, discussing different subjects, discussing different topics, discussing different ideas. And also, this first episode is going to delve pretty deep into my personal life of how I started in the paranormal field and how I got to where I am today. There will also be a lot of interviews with celebrities from paranormal shows, or even a couple radio shows. We're also going to deal a lot with things like, it's not just ghosts or hauntings. It's also going to deal with like psychic mediums. It's going to deal with alien abductions. It's going to deal with Bigfoot. It's going to deal with witchcraft. It's going to deal with the whole big spectrum that I happen to be pretty fluent in many of those. And when I'm not, I will bring in a professional to kind of help me along. So, as I said, this is episode 1, and today we are just kind of sit and talk and get to know one another, and you get to know me, and I get to know you viewers. So, I guess I can kind of start with my background in the paranormal. That way you get an idea of what I've gone through personally and what I have a knack for. But I'm 23 years old, and officially I started in the paranormal when I was 10. However, a few years before then, I had this really weird experience that first started putting into my head about my own abilities. And when people say abilities, obviously you think of psychics. So, do I consider myself a psychic? I don't really know. I want to call what I can do as a gift. But it's something that not everyone else can do. Therefore, it counts as paranormal, because it's outside the normal realm of what's known to be normal. Anyway, so when I was 7, I had a dream about the death of a family member. And it scared me. And, when I woke up, I was upset and crying. And, my mom told me that everything was okay. And that, as far as she knew, they were still alive. Because this was my grandfather on my father's side. My parents were divorced at the time. And so I kind of pushed it out of my head and said it was my imagination. It was just a dream. Then about 3 months later, I ended up being told that not only did my grandmother on that side of the family pass away recently, but so did my grandfather. And it was a bit of a shock to me at the time, because I had kind of pushed it all out of my head. You do everything that a 7-year-old does. You think that it was just a dream, it didn't mean anything. But now that I had confirmation that this person, my grandfather, actually did die, and that I wouldn't find out until months afterwards, was a huge shock for me. It completely blew my mind, and I would sit there for days afterwards thinking about it. And I would think back to other dreams I would have, and I would remember that a lot of dreams I had ended up coming true. I would dream about conversations weeks before they ever happened. I would know what people were going to say because I dreamt about it. I dreamt that it was going to happen. Now, could all of that be coincidence or a weird sense of deja vu? Yes. But as time went on, I started pushing myself out of that realm. I wanted nothing to do with it. And some people have really cool abilities, like they can talk to dead people, or they can move things with their mind, or they can read other people's minds. And that's something that I think I could possibly live with. But it was difficult as a kid to know that every time I would close my eyes, it would be a possibility that I would see someone die. But I got over it, as all children do, and I started to regress in my powers, and I started ignoring things, and eventually they calmed down to the point where I no longer had them. And if I did, I didn't remember them. So, my life in the paranormal didn't exactly stop there, as anyone's does. About 3 years later, when I was 10, I was staying at a friend's house. And she never really told me about any of the weird, creepy stuff that went on there. But one night we were sleeping in the living room, and I had to go to the back of the house into her room to, I'm not really sure what I was doing back there, but I had to go back there for some reason. And when I walked into her room, I saw a shadow to my right on the wall. Nothing big deal. Lights were off. There was a light behind me. It was probably my shadow. But it startled me. You see something out of the corner of your eye and it startles you. So I looked, and when I looked, it just looked like a normal shadow. However, when I took a step forward, the shadow didn't go with me. So again, I kind of froze. I looked, and to kind of, ease myself, I raised my hand up, put it out, and waved it. And when there should have been a shadow on that wall waving back at me, there wasn't. And I suppose that either I scared it or something else scared it, but suddenly it bolts it goes all the way across the walls and behind a dresser that was directly in front of me. And when it reached that dresser, the dresser started shaking violently, and the sound of wood, like wet wood that you would throw on a fire, that crackling noise, that's what sound it started making. And my dumb self, and unlike other 10-year-olds that would probably turn around and run for it and call home and never come back, I walked over to the dresser and put my hand on it, and when I did so, the dresser stopped shaking. I looked behind it, looked everywhere, and there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. I never really told anyone about that until years later, when my friend, the same friend, was mentioning about her seeing a actual ghost in that house. And they ended up calling the ghost Molly. It was a young woman that we looked up, and apparently it was a woman who died in the house. However, I didn't feel like the shadow I saw was the same thing. So, what was it? Or who was it? From that time on, me and my friend both became very interested in the paranormal. We started, watching shows together, like Ghost Hunters was my first show I've really watched, and they really taught me everything I knew about ghosts and ghost hunting, and I still use many of their techniques, even though I kind of make my own, incorporate it into a lot. And now, 13 years later, I teach classes. I've written several books, which you can find here on this website, along with the classes. And now I'm here with all of you talking about the paranormal. So, now we've gotten through how I got into paranormal. I'm going to go into, I touched on paranormal and psychic things all at once right then. Now we're going to go into kind of my life journey. When I was 13, I was in that rebellious teenage stage, and I was very confused of who I was, why I was like I was, why I thought the things I thought, why I was just kind of weird in general. I was weird. And I grew up in a Christian household, and at that point, Christianity just was not working for me. I was just getting into my stage of realizing my own personal sexuality, and Christianity is not very conducive to lesbians. So I went searching for a religion that was, because I just couldn't be atheist. I couldn't think that there was nothing out there at all. And lo and behold, I came across a way of life that it just sparked something in me. It just made me say, this is it. I mean, this is what I'm here for. This is what I should be doing with my life. And as you can imagine, it was Wicca. And a lot of people hear that word and they hightail it for it. But, hear me out. Wicca is a beautiful way of life. You live by nature. You live by gods, goddesses, whatever you want to believe. You put your life and soul and energy into the things around you, and you live by rules. You live by rules, and yes, people, as all people, break those rules, or they go on a different path. It's that one of my favorite quotes ever is that there is no one path in Wicca. There's thousands of them, hundreds of them, and everyone takes a different path. However, lucky me, even though I started off on my own, I did eventually find a mentor who's a very, very old practitioner and was a very good friend of mine until he passed away. And he pretty much taught me everything I knew. He was hardcore into just spell casting and rituals, but he never broke the main rule. And the main rule in Wicca is harm none, but do what you want. You do whatever you want to do, as long as it does not bring harm to anyone. And it doesn't just mean physical harm, okay? It's physical, mental, emotional, anything that could cause someone else to feel pain. Again, not even physical pain, but just pain. is against who we are. And how could you not love something like that? Like, you can go and do anything. You know, there's really no such thing as sin. You know, you don't answer to sin. You live by karma. You live by the threefold law. Whatever you put out in the world comes back to you. So if you put hate and anger into the world, it's going to come back to you even worse than what you put out. But if you put love and caring and forgiveness out into the world, it comes back to you as well. And as a 13-year-old who was struggling with a lot of identity issues at the time, it was a wake-up call for me. And I couldn't believe that I finally found a way. Now, I don't just jump into anything. I don't just say, hey, I'm Wiccan, fine. No. Same thing with ghost hunting. I've spent years studying books and computers and talking to other people. And I study constantly on all of the things that I'm interested in, like ghost hunting, witchcraft, demonology. I'm really big in demonology. I have a degree of sorts in demonology. And I mean, I love what I do in all aspects of my life. And, you know, I'm glad that I can be here to share my knowledge and my experience with everyone. I love writing, I love teaching, and this is going to, I hope, be a good experience for myself. And I hope that it would help everyone out there kind of be who they are. It'll help them understand where they are in this life, and it'll give them insight and everything into different topics or different subjects that they may be interested in. Now, I know this was a little all of me in this, but, you know, this coming up week, I want you all to log in again. Again, it will be Saturday, February, It will be Saturday, March 1st at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's U.S. Eastern Time. So, please come back for this week's episode. It's going to be really good. Okay, we are actually going to go through and interview a professional paranormal investigator. And we're going to kind of listen to his life, and he's going to give us some tips and pointers on how to be a ghost hunter, as he likes to call himself. So, just log into my life as a ghost hunter, AJW. You have to put AJW in. AJW.webs.com. Come right back here, front page, and you can check it out. Also, starting next week, we are going to be doing a Q&A session on the show. So I want you to email me in questions that you may have for me or for next week for the investigator. And I want to see everyone and more log in next week for episode 2. Thank y'all again for joining me on Paranormal Talk, and I will see you soon.